I used to run a travel agency and I've been to Rome loads of times, but when people ask me where to stay in Rome, the answer is always the same. It depends. Because Rome isn't just this massive tourist center, it's actually a big city with many different neighborhoods. And where you stay in Rome can actually make or break your trip. So in this video, I'm gonna share the 3 best areas to stay in Rome, depending on what kind of trip you're after. And I'll also talk a bit about some of the areas that I definitely think that you do not want to stay in. But let's start on a much brighter note. Monti is definitely one of the best areas to stay in Rome, and it's an area that sometimes gets a bit overlooked by tourists, and that's a shame. This is such an incredible little pocket that you might easily overlook if you didn't know about it. The Monti area is, in my opinion, the perfect place to stay in Rome for people a bit like me. You're over 25, you might be traveling with your loved one, and you want to stay close to a good selection of restaurants, cafes and some bars. But a cozy atmosphere is the most important thing. I'm not saying you'll only rub shoulders with locals here in Monti, that's definitely not the case, but it does feel a little bit less touristy, and I've seen many people walk their dogs, and I've been listening to loads of people speak Italian, so it is a little bit different over here. At least compared to the more traditional tourist center, which is only like a 10-minute walk from Monti. And I'm not saying that we are far from history anywhere in Rome, but I am just saying that this area is actually where Julius Caesar grew up, because this area used to be called Subura, and that literally translates to slum in Latin. So this wasn't, it wasn't as pretty as it is these days. It was actually the red light district of Rome. And right around the corner from Monti you have the Colosseum. And if you want to stay at a hotel with a rooftop view of Colosseum, check the description where I'll link to this place and all my other favorite hotels in Rome. Centro Storico is probably the best place to stay in Rome if you're coming here for the first time. This is probably everything you've ever dreamed of when you sat at home and thought about your trip to Rome. You've got amazing piazzas and fountains and cobblestones all over the place in here. It's where you'll find a lot of the most famous buildings and the traditional things to see in Rome. So this is the perfect place to stay for first-time visitors who want to stay within walking distance of more or less everything. However, Centro Storico is a large area that's kinda divided in two by the Via del Corso. On the eastern side you have the Trevi fountain and the Spanish Steps. And I do like this part of Centro Storico, but it is also the peak tourist center of Rome, and I sometimes feel a bit overwhelmed by the big crowds over here. And then over on the west side where I'm standing right now, you've got Pantheon, Piazza Navona, and in my opinion, this is where the good stuff is, and I'll show you why. This little pocket of the Centro Storico is called Parione, and honestly, I'm literally 2 minutes from Piazza Navona with all the tourists. Look at this. I remember the first time when I went to Rome and we went over on the eastern side here in Centro Storico, and I was like, bleeding hell, there are many people over here in Rome. And then we came over here and I was so surprised, because just like today, it seemed like all the tourist hordes, they go to all the stuff in here and then they go to Piazza Navona and then they kind of stop and they don't go any further. So you really should go a little bit further. I'm not trying to claim that the Parione part of Centro Storico is some kind of hidden gem. We are still in the absolute heart of the tourist center. I'm just saying that over near the Trevi fountain there are massive tour groups everywhere, and here in Parione it is a little bit more quiet. If you stay in this part of Rome, you'll also be close to the river where you can cross over to the Prati area and the Vatican City. So make sure you check the description where I'll link my favorite hotels here in Parione. I remember before my first trip to Rome, I was researching where to stay in Rome, and one of the areas that came up all the time was Trastevere. And it came up anytime a guidebook or a travel website said that if you want to stay where the local Romans are living, then you should stay over in Trastevere. So obviously when all the travel websites and all the travel guidebooks says stay over there if you want to stay with the locals, then what happens? Obviously it's gonna get touristy as well. But that said, I do still think that there is a certain vibe in Trastevere that you can't really compare to Rome on the right hand side of the river. I remember the first time I came over here to Trastevere, it was in the evening time, and I was just hit with, you know, the overwhelming feeling of being in a movie about Rome. It was like the piazzas were buzzing with life, and there were huge lines to the best restaurants, and everybody had a drink, and there were, you know, street musicians, and you know, that's the kind of vibe you'll get over here. It is pretty funny that as soon as you cross the bridge over to Trastevere, there's more graffiti, and the bartenders, or you know, the waiters, they're all covered in tattoos, and the beards are long, so that's the kind of area Trastevere is. Just know that if you're staying right around the Piazza Santa Maria here in Trastevere, you are trading, you know, your sleep with fun. So maybe this isn't the area to stay if you're coming to Rome with children. But if you're coming here to party, it's definitely the place to stay. But make sure you check the description where I've linked to some of my favorite hotels in Trastevere and in the other areas as well. Right, so let's talk a bit about the areas in Rome that I think you should avoid. The first one is right outside of Termini station, which is the main train station here in Rome. It's a pretty nice station, and you can get to like most places in Rome. By the way, the trains here in Italy are great, so if you want to get up to Tuscany, to Florence, or down to Naples, or the Amalfi Coast, you can go by train and it's super easy. But the area right outside of Termini is a bit sketchy, and that's probably why there are loads of really cheap hotels around here. But they're cheap for a reason, so guys, avoid it. Even though it might look pretty central on a map, don't stay there, especially if you're coming with children. Just east of Termini, we've got this area called Esquilino. That's kind of the same as Termini, so if you see a good deal for hotels there, avoid it, don't book it. The same kind of goes for an area called San Lorenzo, which I know some people might call it a hidden gem kind of area with loads of graffiti on the walls, and yes, there are some cool bars out there, but if you're just a normal tourist who are coming to Rome to experience all of this and all the other good stuff in Rome, then don't bother staying in San Lorenzo. And with that, guys, thanks a lot for watching this video. Let me know what your favorite part of Rome is, and if you're new here, subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thanks for watching.